Well, folks, as is clear from every single American poll, Americans are losing faith in their institutions. What's the future of the United States look like? Well, first, we have to fix the social fabric. If we don't fix the social fabric, the institutions are irrelevant. So institutions are usually only effective if they govern with a light hand. When the social fabric fails, institutions have to come in with a heavier hand. And then they're not good at it. And then people get angry at each other and they blame the institutions for the actual failure of the social fabric. Generally, tyranny grows as social fabric fails. To take an example, the place where social fabric is the most durable, the tightest, is between you and the other members of your family. You generally don't need a third-party arbiter coming in and adjudicating fights between you and members of. In fact, you resent it if a third-party arbiter comes in and starts messing around in your family's business. Why? Because the social fabric is tight. Well, if things start to fall apart, that's when you have to have child protective services show up or a divorce lawyer show up, and things start to get really ugly. And the more they're involved, the uglier they get. Well, that's true on a societal level as well. As we fail to get along with each other, or as we fail to respect each other as human beings, we start calling in the big guys to come in and enforce our opinion with the gun. This is why, as societies fail, institutions have to get more and more tyrannical. They don't really have a choice. There are two ways that societies go south with regard to societies and institution and their interrelationship. One is the way that I just described. The social fabric decays, and then the institutions follow. You can make an argument that that's effectively what's happened in the United States. That since the 1960s, with the rise of a radical left that overthrew the social compact, and instead of saying, we require change within the boundaries of the social compact, said the entire social compact is corrupt and evil and nasty, and a guise for power, we have to throw it out, that it was no longer a fight between JFK liberals and Nixonian conservatives, that now the fight was between revolutionaries who thought the entire system was corrupt, the Herbert Marcuse argument, the basic idea that all institutions, including freedom of speech, were actually guises for power, that once that corrupted our institutions, and it took a couple of generations to do it, once that was infused throughout our institutions, then the failures of the social fabric were made manifest. People stopped going to church, which was a social fabric builder. People stopped believing one another and their arguments, they started to think were actually just an excuse for you to do the thing you want to do anyway. And when you'd have a good faith argument, there was no such thing as good faith argument anymore. It was basically just accusations. Once that stuff made its way up to the institutions, of course the institutions failed. So that's one way that societies fail, that institutions fail after societies. There is one other way, and it's possible this also happened in the United States, and that is that institutions can cause social fabric to decay. How do institutions cause social fabric to decay? Well, what happens, the elites in a society gain control of an institution, and they decide it is time for world-breaking change. They have to centralize power. That power is now going to be used in top-down fashion in order to crowd out the social fabric because people need to change. And the current social fabric has created flawed people. Get rid of that social fabric, create new circumstances, and the people will flourish and flower anew. That's sort of the case that Marxism makes, is that people are petty and nasty to one another. But if we lived in a Marxist utopia, people would be awesome. So all we have to do is change the superstructure, and suddenly the people themselves change. So institutions captured by elites start to try to cram down change on people at the top level. And in doing so, they must break down the social fabric. It is necessary because the social fabric are little platoons against that, as Edmund Burke described them. Now, a good functioning society uses the social fabric and the little platoons within that social fabric as the building blocks for a broader society. A terrible society must, in utopian fashion, destroy all those building blocks, level the earth, and then build with whatever is left. And that's effectively what you can make the argument happen with American institutions, particularly in the 60s. The growth of government effectively crowded out religion. It effectively crowded out the social fabric. It crowded out all of the connections that you have with your friends, and now it's all been filled by the government. And so then the social fabric fails, and then the call from the government is, well, the social fabric's failing, we need more government. And the government fails at that, but it's still crowded out the social fabric, and now all faith in institutions is lost. Well, whichever of those arguments you accept, one thing is for sure true. If what we have here is not a failure of institutions predominantly, but a failure of the social fabric, this can only be fixed at the local level through the rebuilding of the social fabric. And what that really means, that what we ought to be fighting for, and it's funny because when you discuss this with rational members of the opposite political party, many of them will agree. And I had this conversation openly with Anna Kasparian from the Young Turks, for example. And I got her to agree in sort of broad strokes that what we really need to do with the federal government is minimize it. That when you have a federal government that institutionally is incredibly powerful and everybody's just fighting over the power in order to use it against their political opponents, this exacerbates the collapse of the social fabric. What you really need is local communities to be able to be local communities. That what you can't do is make the argument that the best form of American institution making is going to be done at the top level, because it isn't. It isn't. By the way, the founders understood this, which is why they made the federal government really weak. Comparatively speaking, the federal government was very, very weak. Not just, even after the transformation from the Articles of Confederation to the Constitution. That is a weak federal government. And the truth is that it's only weak top-down structures that have been able to preside over large populations. When you buy a house, you look at the house, you try to fix some things up about it, give a new paint job, fix the doors or whatever. But there's something you probably don't think about all that much, and that's the stuff covering the windows. I mean, that stuff's been there forever. But how light flows into a house is a huge thing. Natural light is one of the reasons that we bought our house, for example. It also meant that we wanted to upgrade the window coverings, and this is why we headed on over to Blinds.com. Blinds.com is the #1 online retailer of custom window coverings with over 40,000 five-star reviews. You can measure and install it yourself or have Blinds.com take care of it with local professionals. There's no showroom, no retail markets. No matter how many you order, installation is just one low cost. If you don't have an eye for design, Blinds.com experts are always available to help choose the style and color right for you. Everything they sell is covered by the perfect fit and 100% satisfaction guarantee. With hundreds of styles and colors to choose from, Blinds.com is sure to have the perfect treatment for your windows. Get up to 50% off, plus doorbusters at Blinds.com's Labor Day sale. It's their biggest sale ever. Save up to 50% right now at Blinds.com when you check out online. And don't forget to tell them you heard about Blinds.com from The Ben Shapiro Show. Rules and restrictions may apply. First, is your cell phone in dire need of replacement? You know the signs. You got the short battery life. You have to have a charger on hand all the time. Or you got a cracked screen that gives you glass splinters. Well, it's time to put that old phone to rest and upgrade to a new 5G Samsung Galaxy from Pure Talk for free. Get a free 5G Samsung Galaxy with 2-day battery life, edge-to-edge display, ultra-strong Gorilla Glass when you sign up for Pure Talk's unlimited talk, text, and 15-gig data plan for just $35 a month. Plus, it comes with mobile hotspot. If you're not using Pure Talk, you're simply paying too much. Get all the data you could ever need for half the price of the big carriers on America's most dependable 5G network. Go to puretalk.com/Shapiro for your free, super durable 5G Samsung Galaxy when you switch over to Pure Talk. Again, visit puretalk.com/Shapiro. Make that switch to my cell phone company, Pure Talk. It's the official wireless partner of the Daily Wire. I've been using Pure Talk for a couple of years now. I switched over all my business phone calls. My business phone calls, pretty important to me. I'm sure all your phone calls are important to you. They have great coverage. They use one of the big 5G networks. And again, when you go to puretalk.com/Shapiro, you get a free super durable 5G Samsung Galaxy when you switch over to Pure Talk. So go check them out right now. They're also a company that happens not to hate your guts. So go check them out right now. puretalk.com/Shapiro. Make the switch to my cell phone company. One of the great lies about empires, for example, is that empires tend to be incredibly onerous. They tend to be tyrannical. They're like in your business all the time at the lowest level. Not durable ones, they aren't. If you look at the history of empires, and the United States is an empire. Okay, I'm not even talking about an international empire. Just by any stretch of the imagination, a government that governs 340 million people over the course of 3,000 horizontal miles and like another 1,500 vertical miles. I mean, you're talking about a land area in the United States that is continental in nature. I mean, it's enormous. That would be, by any stretch of the imagination, an empire, just domestically an empire. Right? All the states would be countries, theoretically, and the United States would effectively be a domestic empire because it's just so big. You're not governing a tiny space like Great Britain or something. And you're not governing a homogenous space either. The United States is incredibly diverse. Okay, so the only way that that succeeds is if the top level is relatively light-handed. And every durable empire ever has actually had a relatively light hand at the top level. The great lie about the Roman Empire, for example, is that the Roman Empire was unbelievably onerous to people in the outskirts of the empire. It's not true. The Roman Empire could be onerous if you rebelled against them. They would come in and they would crush you with an iron heel. But if you're not rebelling against them, they were actually relatively decentralized. The great lie about the Roman Empire, again, is that it was a highly centralized empire. It was not. If you were living in the Middle East for much of the time of the Roman Empire, you were basically living under kind of a local potentate. Very often, the Romans were negotiating with you to appoint somebody who might be like slightly friendlier to you. And that's why the Roman Empire could last for hundreds of years. If you look at other less powerful empires, like, for example, the Austro-Hungarian Empire. The Austro-Hungarian Empire, which started off as the Habsburg monarchy and was an empire that dominated an incredible amount of Europe. The Habsburg monarchy, which launches in like the 16th century and then lasts via the Austro-Hungarian Empire all the way up to World War I. The reason that it was able to govern this amount of territory with this diverse population is because it actually had a very, very light hand. It was actually more visible by its absence than by its presence. They had kind of unified military uniforms, and that's kind of it. I mean, there are a lot of people inside the Austro-Hungarian Empire, ranging from Jews to Muslims to Orthodox Christians to Catholics to Protestants, and they're all living under the Austro-Hungarian Empire because the Austro-Hungarian Empire actually had a fairly decentralized approach to governance. The same thing was true, actually, for a lot of the Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman Empire was kind of a lazy empire. It's why by the time it died in World War I, and just after World War I, it was called the sick old man because it wasn't even capable of governing its own territory. Now, a lot of people see that as a flaw, but the reality is that the only way that you can retain any sort of centralization at all in a very, very large space is either like oppressive tyranny at high levels, which can't be done for long, is what the USSR learned, or you're going to have relative decentralization. Well, the problem is the United States right now is not a decentralized empire. The United States right now domestically is a very, very centralized empire. I mean, we are spending $7 trillion a year. We are engaged at the federal level in everything from how much water you have in your toilet to which individuals should be put in jail. I mean, this is a very non-decentralized, and so what that's doing is it's exacerbating all of the social conflict that already roils under the surface. It used to be that people in California didn't really care about what people in Florida were doing, and those people in Florida didn't really care about what people in New York were doing. We can blame that on social media, or we can blame it on the fact that virtually all policymaking has now been elevated to the federal level. And not only that, a huge percentage of that policymaking is made by unelected bureaucrats who are staffed through unofficial political patronage networks. The only way to cure that is to minimize that power at the top level. Let people go back to doing exactly what they would like to do in their own local communities. That can only happen, ironically, if you have enough trust for your fellow American that you're willing to allow them to do that. And if the answer to that is no, it's hard to see how the country maintains. That's why all the lawfare that we're seeing right now is incredibly dangerous. I mean, we're at a dangerous moment in the United States, just systemically speaking. It is a dangerous moment for the system of the United States because very few people have any baseline faith in the system itself, which, by the way, is again another irony because the fact is the system itself actually, the constitutional system as directed by the founders, actually justified itself in 2020. For all the talk about how America was on the verge of being overthrown in 2020 by January 6th rioters, it was not even close. It was not even remotely close. The system proved itself unbelievably durable, and the natural reaction of the left was the system is so fragile that we have to capture all aspects of it and militarize it against us, and militarize it against our opponents. Are you tired of the lies and the twists of the mainstream media talking points? Yeah, me too. Join me in my newest series, Fact, where I dismantle and bring truth to this tiring mainstream agenda.